here today to talk about finding personal balance through thermodynamics. And I'm sure you're all wondering what that's all about. So here, I have a question for you. Have you ever been in the middle of a situation and you reacted in a way that later you wish you might have been able to take back? It's never happened, right? Never happened. This room is awesome. So maybe it was an email, or maybe, I really did. I just thought that people had bad handwriting. I didn't realize that it was a generational affliction. So I feel much better about myself now. But maybe it was an email you got, or you were trying to decipher somebody's note, or maybe even better, it was a conversation with your kids, or with your spouse, or your in-laws, when you realized that they really pushed your buttons. And upon reflection, you realized, if me, or possibly them, had acted just a little differently, things might have been different, and there might have been a better outcome. So a few years ago, probably when I started my career here, I found myself in that situation a lot, and it really, really bugged me. Because I would go through my day reacting to the stimulus around me, in the grocery store, at work, or whatever, and just go through my day. And then I'd be in the car driving home, or I'd be in the shower at night, and I'd be like, I really should have done that differently. And it was really getting in the way. It was getting in the way of me being a good employee. It was getting in the way of being a great spouse, and I'll be very honest, a good daughter-in-law. And so I set out on a track to figure out how to fix this. And so many of you know that I am a geeky engineer at heart, and I always will be a geeky engineer at heart, no matter how hard I try. And so, I would try to control my emotions, and I wouldn't say something, or I'd wait, or something would happen, but it still happened, and it bugged me. So being the geeky engineer that I was, I started tracking it all. Okay. This moment, I should have, why did it make me get so angry? Or why did it? And I set out on a path to figure out why it was happening to me. And I had charts and graphs, and don't worry, I'm not going to show you all of them, just a few, of how this was happening to me, and how I finally figured out a way to really not let that control what was going on in my life. So today's theme is about body, mind, and spirit. And so what I want to share with you is a few things I've learned throughout my journey of trying to find that balance in my life through a very geeky engineering way, which is the thermodynamics part. And hopefully, by the time I'm finished, there'll be a couple of tools that you have, and maybe you'll recognize a little bit of yourself in my journey as well. Okay, so let's start with what was happening to me. So I would be in a situation, and out of nowhere, I would clam up and have this huge surge of emotion, right? It happened all the time. It happened at work, if someone criticized me. It happened when someone cut me off in traffic. My favorite was when I realized that there I was, dutifully standing at the grocery store with my 9 items in the 10 items or less line, and I realized the lady in front of me has 12 items. 12! 12, oh my God, why does somebody do that? Can you believe it? Oh my God, and I let it affect the rest of my day. Because, I was too good to actually scream at the lady with the 12 items. No, I could control my emotions, right? So I would dutifully just stand there. The whole rest of the day, I'm like, can I believe that lady? And I sometimes realized what was happening in the moment in all my situations was just like the lady in the 12 items or less line. So I would control my emotions and not explode, but man, it was so exhausting. It took so much effort, right, to control it every single time, and I got home exhausted all the time. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, what is happening to me? Because this is really impeding me in being the best that I can be. Because controlling emotions takes a lot of effort, and I'd really like to use that effort doing something else, right? So what was happening to me? Oops, let's go back a second. Okay, that was happening to me, right? So any comic book fans out there? Anybody a comic book fan? Anybody know who this is? Anybody? Okay, this is from Batman. You can read the little caption. They actually created this villain in the Batman series. His name is Amygdala. Seriously, his name is Amygdala. And for those of you who are chuckling because you make the connection, the amygdala is a part of your brain that controls emotion and also has a major part in memory development. And so in this particular character, he was having a rage problem and a memory problem, and so they thought, well, we'll remove his amygdala and he will be better. And just like every superhero, right, Spider-Man with the spider bite, Incredible Hulk with the stuff he drank, when they removed his amygdala, bad things happened. And so he would go into fits of rage. And this was exactly what was happening to me. So the amygdala, you can see here, it says, is an almond-shaped mass of nerves in the brain that controls feelings of rage. But it's not just feelings of rage. But what I was realizing after doing some research about what was happening to me, either being cut off in traffic or standing in the grocery store or having a conversation that was a little nerve-wracking to me, was that I was having what's called an amygdala hijack. Okay, so what is an amygdala hijack? Anybody heard of an amygdala hijack? No, a few. In the front row. Great. I have the experts of amygdala hijack in the front row, and now I'm having one. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what an amygdala hijack is. So this is a picture of your brain. And so what happens in amygdala hijack is you perceive some sort of threat, right? So that's where the I comes in. And it sends a message to your thalamus and ultimately gets to your amygdala. I'm not going to go through all the neurosciences. And your amygdala, think about it, is the epicenter of where you control your emotions. And it also helps actually with long-term memory, but we'll get there in a minute. It controls emotion. And all of a sudden, if you perceive threat, your amygdala sends out all sorts of signals. It's the fight or flight response, right? Everybody's heard of the fight or flight response. So back when we were cavemen, the fight or flight response was something like this. Gee, I see a bear. Perceive threat, right? Fight or flight. So there were specific things that happened in your body that caused this fight or flight reaction. So your brain automatically floods your body with adrenaline. It actually shunts blood where? To your body, right? Because you're going to fight or you're going to flight. And so it actually shunts blood from the parts that it deems unimportant. What parts would that be? Your brain, right? Because you don't need your brain to run or fight so much. So no blood to your brain. Blood goes to your heart. It goes to your muscles, and you're ready to fight or you're going to flight. So this term, amygdala hijack, was actually coined by a gentleman named Daniel Goleman in his 1996 book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. And so when you talk about an amygdala hijack, it has really what you see up here. And so what happens in your body? It's fight or flight. So here is actually what happens. So pupils dilate, mouth goes dry, heart pumps faster. Yeah, I'm definitely having one of those right now. Sweating, muscles tense for action, right? But there are a lot of hidden effects. So we talk about that, right? The blood gets shunted from your brain. Your adrenaline is released. Cortisol, lots of cortisol gets dumped into your body. And you're ready, because that's the primal instinct. So here's the problem. We don't fight bears anymore, unless you live in Alaska regularly or you watch that show where the guy's out in the middle of nowhere, right, all the time. But we still have amygdala hijacks all the time, or at least I do. It's the email, right? It's the text. It's the, oh my gosh, my kid forgot to tell me that, they needed something signed, and now I got this meeting, and I've got to go, drop this thing off at school, and if they don't have the permission slip, my kid can't. And we're trying to juggle all these things, and all day long, we're having these amygdala hijacks. And what's interesting is when you're doing that, at its core, the amygdala hijack is about the fight or flight response. So your body is diverting blood and resource to your muscles and away from your brain, the part that you need the most to figure out all these complex things that are going on in our lives every day. So when your amygdala is hijacked, your performance is very poor despite your abilities. And for me, I would just get more frustrated. I'd get more hijacked, and it was just a vicious circle going round and around and around, right? So there's a lot of neuroanatomy, but this is really all you need to know about an amygdala hijack. The amygdala is the center of the most powerful set of emotions in your body. And the prefrontal cortex is where you do your best thinking. So whether it's being a great parent or whether it's being a great leader at work, you want your prefrontal cortex to be working well. So what does this have to do with thermodynamics? So this is a three-phase diagram. It shows how a substance, say water, behaves under different temperature and pressure conditions. Now, before your eyes glaze over, let me promise you that this is already a theory of thermodynamics you understand. It looks something like this. This is the phase diagram for water. So, let's go back. So, so along the bottom axis here, this is temperature, right? And so you know that when it's really cold, water is ice, right? Then it gets a little warmer, becomes, and then you put the tea kettle on and vapor, right? So this is something I took a whole semester course on. I really don't recommend it. But this is the phase diagram of water. Different substances actually have different phase diagrams. So what it says here is with higher temperature, right, H2O does something different, and actually pressure, same thing. So, in the world, we sit at about 1 atmospheric pressure, unless you live in Denver. And, you're either ice, water, or vapor. So, makes sense, right? Simple. Okay, so this is the phase diagram for carbon dioxide. Different substances have different phase diagrams. So this is carbon dioxide. You know this is dry ice, right, exactly. So this, again, is 1 atmospheric pressure where the world is. It's at most of it. And so you can see really, really cold, solid, dry ice, right? But carbon dioxide never goes to liquid, right? When you sit dry ice out, it automatically goes to gas. And that's what you see here. So because we sit at 1 atmospheric pressure, remember pressure, and temperature. So as it gets warmer, your dry ice goes from solid completely to gas. So now you know all you need to know about thermodynamics. So how does a phase diagram tie together with what I was talking about earlier about thermodynamics, or about amygdala hijacks? So here's what I realized. I actually started plotting all of the times that I would have an amygdala hijack during the day. You can tell this is a huge problem for me. And so I came up with a phase diagram for myself. It looks something like this. Same 2 graphs, right? Temperature on the bottom, pressure up top, solid, liquid, gas. So just like in the phase diagram of water, you see temperature down here. So temperature to me is an external thing, right? You're turning up the heat, you're turning down the heat. So in my phase diagram, I think of this as how much others care about the situation. It is external, right? Pressure to me is internal. It's how much I care. How much internal pressure am I putting on myself? Because I found that in different times, I would react differently in the exact same situation. I couldn't figure out why. And a lot of it had to do with this idea of how much others care versus how much I care. So let me tell you a great example of this. So let's say that I'm going out to dinner with my parents. We don't really care where we're going to go eat, right? It's about spending time with my parents. And so I don't really care very much, and my parents don't care very much either. And so I don't know if this happens in your household, but we can sit around in the house for 20 minutes trying to decide where to go eat because nobody cares, right? So I call that indifference. And you're sitting there, solid state, kind of no inertia, right? Just sitting there. So the opposite of that would be somebody cares a lot, or I care a lot, right? And that would be the gas phase. And that, to me, is amygdala hijack territory. That's when, oh my gosh, emotions are high, we're having a life or death discussion, right? So to me, the place you want to be is kind of in this middle where you're generating movement. And that is, to me, the ideal place to be. So how then do you achieve this optimal balance of staying in the liquid state? So going back to Daniel Goleman, he talks about the opposite of an amygdala hijack is emotional intelligence. And the emotional intelligent person is engaged and focused and motivated. So how do I stop this from happening? Let's go back to the three-phase diagram really quickly, right? So how do we get water to stop boiling? That's right, it's not a trick question. You turn off the heat, right? You take the tea kettle off the stove, you let the heat dissipate. So it's the same thing emotionally intelligent people do. And by the way, I am not saying that I am one. I am definitely a work in progress. So what can you do about your amygdala hijacks? So here are a couple things. One, most important, listen to the tea kettle. Recognize when you're in this mode. When you feel it, and you know what that is for you. For me, my shoulders kind of come up. You know, my hands get a little clammy. For you, it might be something totally different. But listen for the tea kettle and know when that happens. Secondly, take the water off the stove. Use the 6-second rule. When you get amygdala hijacked, it takes 6 seconds for all those chemical reactions to actually make it through. And for you to take then a deep breath, a few of them actually, to start the positive airflow, right? Start that positive airflow and get that blood flowing back to that prefrontal cortex. And then finally, the last piece, identify the heat source. Because it's not healthy, by the way, to be in amygdala hijack all the time. You know what they call that when you're amygdala hijacked every day and you're living at this chronically high cortisol kind of level? Chronic stress, that's right. It's chronic stress. And then you are cortisol in your body all the time, and everybody knows about all the effects of chronic stress, right? Most importantly, that you can't think straight. So identifying the heat source. So I want to finish with one thought for those of you who lead people out there, and I know there are a lot of you who do this. When you realize that your emotions are contagious, then you understand the primal task of a leader. A highly intelligent leader can reshape the emotional landscape of a potentially troublesome situation. And so how are ways that you can do this? So here are 2 tools that I have found help me, and maybe 1 or 2 of these might help you. The first is ensuring a proportional response. One thing I know about myself is that I am a perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect. And I've learned it's hard sometimes for me to separate what's really important from things that are only mildly important. And so I would get amygdala hijacked because everything was extremely important, right? So one of the tools that I have is to pause and ask myself, is this a $5 bet? Or is this a $5 million bet? And it sounds simple, but it helps. Not only has it helped in individual situations, it's actually helped in large group situations as well. So is it a $5 bet or is it a $5 million bet? Remember, when you think about dissipating heat, between every stimulus, there is a response. And oftentimes, that time in between is very small. What we're trying to do is extend that time between stimulus and response, right? So the way I extend my time is to these 2 tools. 1, a proportional response, and then secondly, and this was the really hard one for me, know who you are at your best. So some of you may have already done this. You have done strength finders or completed a personal mission statement. All those are great things. But if you want a place to start and you haven't done this yet, for those of you especially who journal and that works for you, or when you're meditating, here are some questions to ask yourself. List your strengths. What do you love to do? When are you at your happiest? When do you feel you are most naturally yourself? And think about what those things are. That's step 1. The second step is actually, to me, just as important, which is find a way to remind yourself of who you are at your best. And in that moment between stimulus and response, ask yourself, is it a $5 bet or a $5 million bet? And then secondly, remind yourself who you are at your best, because that's who we all want to be. We don't want to be apologizing to our kids because we yelled at them because we took something, you know, we took home something that happened at work and now we took it out on our kids, right? That's not, but we, you know, I've done it. I've yelled at my spouse and he's like, really? It's just chicken. You know, but we carry it with ourselves. So I'll show you how I did it. And So, whoops. So I did a personal mission statement and remind myself of who I am at my best. And I have this really floppy flower sitting in my office because part of my mission statement is I am a humble, loyal gardener. And so this floppy flower sits on my desk, usually between my phone and my computer, because where do I get hijacked the most? In emails. And before I respond or before I do anything, I pause, I look at the flower, and remind me of who I am at my very best, and then take a deep breath and try to live that way. So I'm clearly still a work in progress, but I hope by sharing what I've learned about amygdala hijacks, how they're really set off by two factors, right? How much others care and how much you care. To learn to identify when you're having amygdala hijack. Remember, listen to the tea kettle, 6 seconds, take those 6 seconds, and then trying to figure out long-term how to get out of that cycle in terms of identifying the heat source and taking these two tools. Is it a $5 bet or a $5 million bet? And secondly, remembering who we are at our best, because we're all pretty cool at our best. And if we could all be at that place, it would be awesome.